Hey there, my name is Elizabeth Nordenholt. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist working under supervision, and I am here to talk to you about why you should play more and the importance of play. Before we get started, I do want to give a big thank you to Pineapple Support and their sponsors for making this webinar possible. All right, let's go. Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Nordenholt. I am an associate marriage and family therapist working under supervision, and I'm here today to talk to you all about why you should be playing more and how important it is, even for adults. So, here's just kind of a little snapshot of what we're going to be kind of covering and talking about. Play is a basic human need that has a myriad of benefits for adults, but kind of even though we know this, most adults aren't playing enough. And we're going to kind of talk about what that looks like and what that means. But to do that, we kind of need to define what play actually is and what does it mean to be playful and to actually be engaged in play. Also, what is sort of the neuroscience of play? What's happening in our brains when we are actually engaged in play? And then, of course, what are the benefits, of which there are many, as we will find? And then, how can we incorporate more play into our lives day to day so we can actually reap these benefits? So, a little bit about me. Like I said, my name is Liz. My pronouns are she, her. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist working in California right now. And I do also work for a program called Hero Journey Club as a journey guide. I'll talk about that a little bit more later, but I think they're doing a great job bringing play into the mental health space. Prior to my joining the mental health field as a therapist, I wore a lot of different hats. I worked as a stage manager professionally doing theater. I also did event management. I was a sales rep for a brewery for a while. I was a podcast creator and editor. And I'm currently a staff member at my LARP. LARP stands for Live Action Role Play, if you haven't heard of it. The easiest way to sort of describe it to those who are uninitiated is if you remember when you were a kid and you would go play out in the street with your friends and you would pretend you were fighting bad guys or whatever. It's sort of just that, but we're all adults now, so we have money we can spend on things, and there's more rules. But it's essentially just structured pretend play, which is all to say, like, my careers have often involved very playful elements, right? I did theater professionally. It's called a play for a reason. And even now in my day-to-day life, I just enjoy play a lot. I engage in play in a lot of different ways. I play tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. I LARP. I enjoy board games, murder mysteries, video games, Magic the Gathering. I attend immersive events relatively frequently. Play is a really big part of my life. You can see the photo on the side. That's a photo of me and a friend at the LARP. We're having a good time. And so, yeah, it's a big part of my life. And it's become clear to me that's not the case for a lot of people, actually. So why did I even get interested in this? My interests developed really before I even entered the mental health field. And I noticed that I was experiencing a lot of positive benefits from engaging in hobbies, playing games, and doing other things I found fun. I felt like it was giving me more social connections, and it provided this opportunity for me to like learn things. And I sort of noticed as I would talk to my friends who didn't play as often told me they were feeling lonely, they might feel adrift, they struggled with their mental health. They just were sort of missing something is what they were often finding. Whereas my friends who were usually right there playing alongside me told me they felt that through this play, they'd gotten more confidence, they'd been able to practice new skills, or sometimes even address parts of themselves that maybe usually felt a little too scary to approach, but they were able to actually kind of engage with that in ways that felt safe and secure while they were playing. So I was kind of curious, what's actually happening here? A lot of us are actually on a play deficit, which we actually know is not great for us. A 2023 survey found that adults between 18 and 54 allocated about 4 to 6 hours a week to what they classified as sports and leisure. And this is not quite play because it also included things like social connectedness, relaxing, that sort of stuff, but also did include things like video games, uh, hobbies, that sort of things. It also included watching TV, which kind of on average, that was about 2 hours of the 4 to 6 in most of these age groups. And we'll talk a little bit about if watching TV is play or not. It's not always. So I don't know that most adults are even hitting 4 to 6 hours of play a week. It's probably closer to 2 to 4. Play deficits in children have been linked to a myriad of social deficits. And what we can actually see is because if they're not getting enough opportunity for that true play experience, they're at sort of a deficit and they might not have the opportunity to develop certain skills, which actually will put them behind their peers, which can sometimes even carry into adulthood. For adults, play often gets skewed as sort of childish or frivolous. Most adults at one point in time or another have experienced some sort of shaming for engaging in a play activity, people telling you it's a waste of time and you don't need to be doing it. So there's a lot of stigma around it in actually certain ways. We're kind of work in this society where if something isn't productive or if we're not good at it, we get told there's not really a point in pursuing it. And that's just not the case. That's actually very counterintuitive to what play actually is. So play is for kids and adults. Most of us know play is good for kids. This is not a huge secret. It's pretty commonly accepted that play is really essential for healthy development in children. The United Nations has even gone so far as to say that play is the right of every child. To the point that when UNICEF goes into disaster zones, they bring toys and create a children's space so kids can begin playing again immediately because it's that crucial to their well-being. It does a myriad of things for kids. It can support healthy brain development. It literally helps neurons connect for their little developing brains. It's a really important way that toddlers and infants interact with their environment and learn more about it. It allows for exploration of fears and practice of new skills for them. It lets them kind of engage with things in ways that are a little more controlled and safe so they can kind of get a handle on it better. And it's one way they build relationships with peers and caregivers. Play is a great way to foster intimacy, connectedness, that sort of stuff. So through this play, kids are able to kind of explore their environment. They learn how to use their bodies in new ways. They develop these social skills. They hone problem solving abilities. There's just like anything that a child is trying to develop at this time in their life, play can usually help with. So here's some great examples. A baby around 8 to 10 months, this is right around the time they're developing that object permanence, where they're starting to understand that when something goes away, it still exists. It's just not there in front of them. And this is also when a lot of children start developing separation anxiety from their parents. And they start looking for them. And so actually playing peekaboo with the mother can help the baby learn that even if they can't see her, she's still there. She hasn't disappeared forever. She's still around. It helps them get that grasp of that object permanence. Children may also imitate adult behaviors. We see this a lot. They play house, they feed baby dolls, and this is them sort of rehearsing skills that they'll eventually need to learn in adulthood. It allows for kind of social skills as well, like sharing, taking turns. It helps build empathy, helps them develop teamwork. So allows fostering a lot of pro-social skills. And then playing together just creates friendships and other social connections. And we can even see this in babies and toddlers. Sometimes babies will coo when they see one another because they're like, I know you and I like you. So, and that's because they'll play together in the ways that babies do. So it's a way to foster those sorts of connections. It allows problem solving opportunities in ways that, again, are kind of safe and controlled. And when we're talking sort of about storytelling, fairy tales and stories, children are able to encounter these concepts like death or other things that might feel really big and dangerous, but it's safe and controlled. So it kind of gives them this opportunity to learn about these things and experience them in ways where they're less overwhelming than when they might encounter it in real life. So basically, play is a basic human drive, and it's hardwired into all of our brains. And all children across all cultures play. And it might look different from culture to culture, but pretty much everyone engages in it. So that's great. But what about adults? All right, so there's been a lot less research on the benefits of play for adults. Part of this is it's been very focused on children. Part of this is play is a little bit hard to quantify. It's hard to measure and actually study. But a lot of it is also just our culture is less receptive of play for adults and is frankly most of the time we view it as unnecessary. You get told you're wasting time or that, it's not productive. But again, this is something that's literally wired into our brains and it's important throughout our life for a lot of the same reasons it's important to kids. Okay, so before we kind of get into what are the benefits of play, I want to kind of talk about like what is play actually, because it's kind of a broad definition that's a little hard to pin down. So what is it? We can say play is an activity that holds our attention as an enjoyable. We're engaged with it. We're enjoying it. We're having fun. Usually there is this suspension of time. Think of this saying, time flies when you're having fun. You kind of get into the zone and you kind of lose track of what's happening around you because you're so engaged. It is a voluntary act, and what we're doing is actually more important than the outcome. It is not goal driven. We are doing it for the sake of doing it. Sometimes this is described as apparently purposeless. That's a little stigmatizing because, again, we're going to talk about all the benefits we get out of doing this. But again, it's about engaging in the act and not actually what we're trying to achieve. Typically, play is imaginative, it's symbolic, or it can encourage social connections. And really, it can be a wide variety of things. But just because we look like we're engaged in play doesn't mean we're actually playing. So, some people love jigsaw puzzles, right? They get a lot of enjoyment out of them. And for other people, a jigsaw is just a tedious process. So not everyone doing a jigsaw puzzle is necessarily playing. It's more about how they're engaged with the actual activity. So this kind of brings us to this idea that play is really a state of mind. When we are really playing, we're in what is called a play state. So children are able to access this easier. They don't have all the responsibilities of being an adult, and it's just easier to kind of get to this pure play for them. That said, adults can still access it under the right conditions. We just might need to do a little bit more work to make that happen. But again, and I promise I'm going to explain this more in a minute, play is literally a basic biological need that is hardwired into our brains, which means that even as adults, our brains will respond if we put stimuli in front of it that reminds us of play. So a game, a ball to toss with your dog, anything like that, that will sort of get our brains ready, like, oh, it's time to play now. So when you're in this play state, you might kind of know you're there because you're having fun, you're relaxing, you're feeling that kind of in the zone experience. And it's engrossing. It can take up all of our focus while we're in the activity. So the other thing we're really kind of trying to foster here too, when we're talking about play, is a more playful attitude or disposition. And playfulness is usually defined as this personality trait that allows someone to kind of think flexibly, take risks, be more self-actualized, and think creatively. It can also be described as one's ability to kind of frame or reframe everyday situations and experiences to find them entertaining, intellectually stimulating, or interesting. So it's sort of this ability to kind of adapt to what's in front of you and make it a little lighter, make it a little easier, and approach it with sort of fun or humor or creativity. Adults who score higher on self-reported playfulness assessments see a huge correlation with overall health, quality of life, happiness. A lot of studies find that more playful adults tend to perform better in just about every metric that they study. So let's talk about free play for a second, because when we're talking about play, this is really the core of it. Free play is this activity that an individual chooses to do simply because they want to. They don't have an obligation. They don't have a responsibility. It doesn't need to be done. It is purely a thing that they want to do because they think it will be fun. Dr. Peter Gray, who is a researcher who has done a lot of work in the area of play, has sort of these 5 qualities of free play that he defines, which include them being self-chosen and self-directed. The means matter more than the end results. They're structured or ordered based on the rules in the player's mind. There's not like necessarily an external factor here. It is all kind of coming from within the person who is playing. They are imaginative and they have a creative aspect to them. And we have, again, this playful state of mind. The player is engaged and focused on the activity. There's no fear of judgment or consequences outside the activity. They're just doing it to do it. There's no worry of, am I doing this wrong? Am I going to get in trouble? It is just to have fun. So we also, though, sometimes see directed playful activities, and these can kind of incorporate play, but they might not always be play. So this can be things like a teacher using a game to teach a lesson, and just anything that kind of tries to pull in that playfulness in conjunction with actually working towards some sort of goal. The individuals who buy into the activity can reach a play state, and they may, in fact, be playing, but that's not going to be true for everyone. So we have to kind of be careful here that just because we're designing it to be play doesn't mean everyone's going to engage with it in that way. And a lot of that is because the way we all play is very different based on how we're socialized, based on our backgrounds, just based on who we are innately. Not everyone plays the same way. Directed playful activities, that said, can still be very useful. A lot of times they have the same emotional, social, and cognitive benefits as pure play, but it's really only for the individuals who are able to access that play state. If you can't access that play state, you're not going to get as many of those benefits. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the neuroscience of play. So this neuroscientist, Jacques Pansep, developed this concept of affective neuroscience and these 7 primal emotions. So affective neuroscience is essentially the study of how the brain processes emotions, what's happening in our brain when we're feeling things. At the time this was developed, mostly what neuroscience was looking at was cognitive things, so memory, thoughts, that sort of stuff. There wasn't so much looking into actually emotions and what's happening in our brain when we're feeling them. So this theory is still disputed. There's not really it's nothing definitive yet, but we're not super sure about the neurobiological. Let me take that again. So this theory is still disputed. Scientists still aren't 100% sure about the basis of emotions, but we're going to kind of work in this idea because it really gives us this foundation of play being a basic drive that is innate to us. Most of the studies done in this discipline are actually done on animals, usually mammals like rats, chimpanzees, that sort of stuff. And we see these primal emotions displayed in virtually all mammals. One of the first kind of famous studies in this was when they tickled rats and found that they laughed. And so really seeing that animals engage in play in the same way as we do. So this is sort of supporting this idea, again, that it's just wired into our brains. It's just innately part of who we are. So these primal emotions we're talking about, there's 7, and they are seeking, rage, fear, lust, care, panic, and play. So when we're talking about these live in what is called sometimes our midbrain or our limbic brain. And this is sort of a older part of our brain that developed longer ago than, say, like the neocortex, which is where we kind of do all of our thinking and cognition, right? This part of the brain is present in all mammals, which is why, again, we see all of these emotions present across all mammal species. And when we're playing or exposed to playful stimuli in our environment, there are these parts of our brain that will light up, like they are ready to engage in play. So now that we know kind of what play is and that it is, in fact, something that is just part of who we are, let's talk about its benefits. There are quite a few. The most straightforward are probably the physical health benefits. Play activities encourage activity. It can be sports. It can be going out for a run. It can be tossing a frisbee with your friends. Anything that kind of gets you up and moving. This obviously encourages people to be less sedentary, and it can improve health outcomes. We're always hearing about how Americans need to exercise more, and just getting up and moving, making it playful, making it fun is an easier way to kind of work that into people's day-to-day lives. It can also lead to a better connection and sense of our own bodies. A lot of us are not necessarily super in touch with our bodies and what's going on. And so certain physical activities like dance can really help us bring an awareness to our bodies, which can be really beneficial. And staying active is also great for reducing stress, improving sleep, other metrics like that. So, mental health benefits. Play, again, can reduce stress. And this is because it really releases endorphins. Having a playful attitude can also actually make it easier to cope with stress, which we'll talk about again in a minute. Um, Play can also help keep our minds active. It can kind of keep that reasoning, that problem solving online if we're doing it regularly. So it helps really keep our minds active. It can be a really interesting avenue for self exploration and discovery under the right circumstances. And in therapeutic environments, it can actually be a really powerful tool. Role playing exercises can give people the chance to practice difficult conversations or confront things that might otherwise be too scary within the safe space of a therapeutic environment. And it can also help develop tools for self soothing, stress management, that sort of stuff. In geriatric populations, play is correlated with a lower subjective age, which is to say, these people literally feel younger. If you are more playful, you feel younger, which can be a huge benefit, especially in aging populations. And a more playful disposition is correlated with higher levels of well being and satisfaction with life overall. So, I kind of want to talk about some interesting studies around how incorporating play activities into therapy have been really beneficial to people. There was a 2017 study that utilized play therapy techniques that are typically used with traumatized children with a small group of adults who were at an inpatient facility being treated for CPTSD. And these patients had done a myriad of other therapeutic interventions already. They had done talk therapy, art therapy, occupational therapy, all sorts. But in this activity, they were given blocks, and they were sort of told in a group session, "Hey, these are your blocks. You are free to build whatever." And then at the end, in the group, they all sort of shared what it was they built and talked about the meaning behind it. Again, this is a pretty standard intervention used with children, and they just gave it to adults. And what the facilitating therapist found actually was that this method allowed the individuals to kind of make new discoveries about themselves and be more introspective about certain things. It gave them more creativity and vulnerability, which really allowed these patients to kind of get to the core issue of what they were trying to work through faster. It sort of shortcut some of the other things that other methods of therapy had not been able to do so far. So, pretty much all of the patients in this study saw a benefit from actually using a play therapy intervention. A 2013 study found that more playful adults coped with stress better and had an easier time using stress management techniques that were taught to them. They looked at adults too who scored lower on playfulness scales, and these adults had a harder time coping with stress, but also utilizing the same stress management techniques that they were taught. So it wasn't a matter that the people who were less playful didn't have these skills taught to them. It was just that it was harder for them to actually deploy them in the moment when they needed it. And there was a correlation with how playful the people were and how successful they were with using these tools. So role playing games for self actualization is actually a whole really interesting topic that I could probably do a whole presentation on, but we're going to just touch on it here. So a role playing game is really any game where a player has assumed an identity other than their own for the purposes of the game. This can be certain video games, tabletop games like Dungeons and Dragons, live action role playing, murder mysteries, anything like that. Anything where you're kind of putting on a different persona and pretending to be someone who's not you. What's really interesting about a lot of these games, though, is typically there are differences and similarities between us and the character we've chosen to play. We always bring a little part of ourselves to any character we're playing. And this sort of gap between the two creates this really unique opportunity for growth and self-actualization. RPGs can kind of allow us to engage in these 4 different dimensions of learning. So knowing, doing, being, and relating, right? So knowing, again, it's this idea of like learning skills, learning new things. Doing, what am I doing? Being, and again, this is where it gets interesting. I am myself as I'm playing this character, but I'm also this character. So it's this experience of kind of being 2 different entities at the same time and figuring out what is different and what is the same and what are those experiences like. And then relating. Most RPGs are social games. You're playing with other people. And this gives an opportunity to be engaging with others, developing those social skills, creating more social bonds, so on and so forth. So these, so kind of some interesting, let me take that again. So these four facets of learning allow us unique opportunities. And again, this is not something that's been heavily researched, but it is sort of a open secret that there's a lot of benefits here. Within role-playing game communities, it's pretty common to hear trans or queer people cite that one of the first places they began exploring their sexuality or gender identity was in role-playing games. They felt it was sort of a safe place for them to test the waters for themselves, but also with their peers. Oftentimes, trans people might make a character of a different gender identity than the one that they've been assigned at birth, and will kind of use it to see how it feels for them, but also what is their reaction to their friends if they decide to play a character with a gender that's not aligned with the one that they're openly identifying with right now. And so it's also this way to kind of gauge the safety of your peers, but also kind of experiment and see what's happening for you. It's this lower stakes way to kind of practice new skills as well. So a person who is maybe very nervous about conflict and can be conflict averse might have an easier time in a role-playing game, because that while in the game, maybe this is a high stakes situation, it's all pretend. And there's actually nothing bad that's going to happen if this doesn't go well. And hopefully the person you're doing conflict with is your friend and you trust them. And it's not going to impact in real life if you have some conflict within the space of this game. It can also allow us to face fears in ways that are controlled, where we know we can kind of withdraw at any time. Again, if there's something that is normally upsetting or scary for you, role-playing games can sort of be a gentle way to interact with it, where at any time you can kind of say, hey, I need to actually remove myself. But because, again, we have this idea of it's imaginative, we're not necessarily, we're not in as much danger. It can also kind of improve communication and social skills. And there's this interesting phenomenon with sort of meta communication that can kind of happen in here. So as an example, if I'm at my LARP and I go up to my friend and I say, you're a scoundrel and you need to come fight me right now for what you did. My friend, who maybe in character is my enemy, they hear my words of, I think you're a terrible person, I'm going to fight you. But they know what I'm actually saying is, hey, you and I should have a sword fight right now. I think that'd be really fun. And so there's this way of kind of learning subtext that role-playing games are really unique when it comes to. It's this way of like, what is being said on the surface is not what is actually meant, and learning how to kind of parse through those things. And that's a skill that can carry outside of the game into our day-to-day life as well. So another way games are really great is, again, skill acquisition. There was a study that found games can really enhance our creativity. They had people play 30 minutes of a creative board game before moving back towards a work or school project, and found that the people who engaged with the creative board game were actually more creative when it came to work and school. So again, a way we can foster this. Role-playing video games have been found to show ethical reasoning development. A lot of times these role-playing games will present you with ethical dilemmas, and it's your job as the character to decide, what do I want to do? You have to sort of think through of it, and you can pick the bad choice, right? You can do the evil thing and see the fallout from it. So it actually has been found to kind of help people develop ethical reasoning skills, which can then be more easily applied to real life. Incorporating play into educational instruction is sort of very well understood. We see it done with kids, but it can be really helpful with adults as well. It helps with retention of information. There was a study where they had people learning basic first aid. Some learned it through a game and some learned it through reading a pamphlet. And the people who learned it through the game retained that information much better. And it can also provide a place to practice certain skills in a lower stakes way. Again, you're getting this ability to try new things and push your boundaries just a little bit. And it's not just a way to like learn hard skills either, but more of the soft skills, like the social, emotional, and reasoning skills. This is a space to learn those as well. And then finally, social benefits. Play really gives us improved relationships. Couples that have more playful attitudes with one another report better relationships. It creates more novelty and makes handling stress and conflict easier, which are all aspects of relationships that have more longevity and durability. Play helps us become better collaborators and team players, especially if you're doing collaborative play. Again, you're getting that practice of working together towards a common goal, or just working with your peers. Play with others can also foster these feelings of compassion, empathy, trust, and intimacy. We can grow closer to people, which can then help us create more friendships, or deepen the friendships we already have. This is great for reducing loneliness, feelings of isolation, which is a growing problem really in our society. A lot of people state it's very difficult to make new friends, and play is a great way to sort of springboard into meeting new people and developing those connections. So I'm going to talk for a minute about this organization, this group called Hero Journey Club, which is this kind of really unique organization. And what they do is they facilitate subclinical support groups where people who they call journeyers can meet and discuss their struggles, their feelings, kind of what's going on in their life while playing video games like Minecraft, Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, that sort of stuff. These groups are facilitated by journey guides, which are usually mental health professionals who are there to sort of like provide a container and create a space. And it's a really interesting model because they found that it allows people who are maybe not so interested in traditional therapy to kind of still be addressing their mental health in a way that is a little more accessible, a little less intimidating. A lot of the people who come to Hero Journey Club might feel a little isolated. They may not have a lot of friends or social connections. And so the fact that they're in these groups of usually about 5 creates social connection, and it is built up around this hobby of playing video games together. And having the games as sort of a central part of the group's structure is a really interesting benefit to the journeyers. I've had journeyers tell me they feel more comfortable sharing while we're actually playing the game. Something about it makes it easier for them to open up and be vulnerable and actually talk about the things that have been really challenging for them. And it really, having this shared activity together where we're all playing a game just makes it easier for them to kind of join us in the space and actually get the benefits of the mental health care that they're seeking from the group. It creates, again, this sense of intimacy and closeness, which a lot of times these people are also not necessarily feeling like they have in their life. So creates friendships, and other social bonds that can be really beneficial. And just in general, communities built up around play often play a really crucial part in people's support systems. Again, it's where people are meeting their friends and they're making their communities. And this is really more important than ever as we're seeing kind of the traditional places people tend to find those communities erode over time. As more people are not getting married and having kids, they're losing access to certain ways people used to connect and make friends then. As people are leaving spaces like churches and religious organizations, again, typically a place people have found community, and we're not having that as much. So these play spaces can really kind of fill that gap for a lot of people and help them build community, which is really important for that social support. Okay, so how do I play more? What a great question. So one of the great things I love is this idea of finding your play personality. And this idea was developed by Dr. Stuart Brown after lots of interviews with lots of people about how they enjoy play. And it's this idea we each have our own unique relationship to play, and we'll choose to play in different ways. So there's 8 different ones, and you may find one resonates with you more than another. There might be a few that you kind of feel drawn to. This is really just kind of meant to be a springboard to start thinking about, like, what is fun for me? How do I want to play? So our first one is the collector. And this is a person who just enjoys collecting objects or experiences. It could be, actually collecting things like the Pokemon, you got to catch them all. It could be about maintaining them, a car collector who wants to get the nice vintage cars, but also do the work on them and maintain them. Or it could be someone who's really interested in collecting experiences. Maybe they want to visit every continent or go to every Disneyland across the world. So again, it's this person who's just enjoying kind of like bringing in many of the same things. The competitor, these are the people who love to win, and they really enjoy the creativity that comes with strategizing to get to that win. Sports, video games, things like that, obviously great for people who really enjoy competition. These can be solo activities or group ones. It just sort of depends. The creator, this is a person who, again, enjoys creating. And this could look like artistic pursuits like painting, pottery, whatever. But it could also look more practical. It could be sewing their own clothes, decorating their house, making a garden. And it might even manifest in things such as like assembling a birdhouse or building their own custom PC, just anything where you're using that creativity to make a thing. The director. So these are the people who kind of enjoy facilitating things, right? They enjoy organizing and executing things to put together. So they're your party planners. They're the people who are putting together the vacation or the game night. They're kind of creating these spaces where people enjoy playing, and for them, that is where the real fun is. The explorer. And okay, so this is built around this desire to get to know more places or experiences and chasing the novelty that comes with that sort of exploration. It could be a literal, I want to go explore the world and traveling, or it could be exploring new experiences, gaining knowledge, or even exploring within yourself and learning more about who you are. The Joker, these are your comedians, they're your pranksters. These are the people who enjoy making people laugh, playing practical joke, and just really playing with that wit and the creativity around that. The kinestate, these are your people who enjoy active play. So they might be athletes, but it could also be something less sports related. So it could be hiking, dancing, swimming, or, it could be something as simple as dancing in your living room, just anything that gets you up and moving around. If that is how you like to play, this might be one of your play personalities. And then the last one is the storyteller. These people thrive on imaginative play. They may enjoy writing stories, but it could also just be engaging with stories in other ways. So this is where watching TV or reading books can kind of fall into play. Sometimes when we've got the TV on, it's just on, we're zoned out, we're not actually engaged in a playful way. But for these people, these storytellers, they're engrossed in the story, they're really wrapped up in what's happening in that world. For them, that is play. So our storytellers, they like to make stories and they also like to witness them. So what are some other ways we can bring more play into our lives? Make time for it. First of all, find activities you enjoy and make them a priority. Remember, this isn't just about the outcome. This is an activity you're doing because you enjoy it. It doesn't need to be profitable. It doesn't need to be productive. It doesn't need to move you closer to any single goal. You don't have to be good at it. I like to tell people, go be bad at something for a little bit. Like, it doesn't matter, because that's not the point. The point is that you are engaging with it and having fun. It's time to foster this creativity, connection to yourself and others, and enjoyment. Again, there's no wrong way to do this. If you're asking yourself, am I going to play right? Get rid of that. That's not the question we're actually asking here. There's no wrong way. So don't worry about if you're doing it right. If you're having fun and engaged, you're playing. Again, it isn't about the outcome. It's about what you're doing. It's about being present in that moment and enjoying it. And something I sometimes will ask folks when they're telling me like, I don't really know what I want to do, is I'll say, well, what's the thing you always wanted to do as a kid? Can you make that happen now? Because I think a lot of us had something as a child that we thought, oh, it would be really fun to learn this new skill or participate in this activity. And we just never had the opportunity for whatever. So can you find a way to do this? If you always wanted to learn how to paint, buy a paint book, get on YouTube, take a paint class, something like that. And really try to engage with that part of your inner child as well. And the last thing, observe kids. Kids know how to play. They reach this play state way easier than we do. So observe them. And if you have the opportunity, join them, go play with them. That's good for them. It's good for you. And it might make it easier to access that play for you as well. All right. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope you got something out of this. And I will thank you all so much. Again, this presentation was brought to you by Pineapple Support and their sponsors. Thank you so much.